Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravijacharya Storo Shishyamat Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravijacharya Storo Shishyamat Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Anandi Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Nam Acharya Slaridas Thakur Ki Prem Sakaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaur Bhaktivrinda Ki Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Navdeep Dham Ki Ganga Maya Jamuna Maya Ki Bhakti Devi Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivrinda Ki Ita Gaur Premanande All glories to the assembled devotee. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So today we're reading from the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, seven chapter, text 1 and 2. Maitreya uvacha ityajen anunitena bhavena paritasyata abhyadvayi mahabaho prahasya suyatam iti. The sage Maitreya said, O mighty armed Vidura, Lord Shiva, being thus pacified by the words of Lord Brahma, spoke as follows in answer to Lord Brahma's request. So I think we're doing text 2 today. I think that's on your sheet. Mahadeva uvacha nagaham prajaisa balanam vadnaya nanuchintaye devamaya bibhutanam dandastatra dritomaya. Mahadeva uvacha nagaham prajaisa balanam vadnaya nanuchintaye devamaya bibhutanam dandastatra ditomaya. Mahadeva uvacha nagam prajaisa balanam vanaya nanuchintaye devamaya bibhutanam dandastatra dritomaya. Mahadeva uvacha nagham prajaisa balanam vanaya nanuchintaye devamaya bibhutanam dandastatra dritomaya. Mahadeva uvacha nagam prajaisa balanam vanaya nanuchintaye devamaya bibhutanam dandastatra dritomaya. Mahadeva uvacha nagam prajaisa balanam vanaya nanuchintaye devamaya bibhutanam dandastatra ditomaya. Mahadeva uvacha nagam prajaisa balanam vanaya nanuchintaye devamaya bibhutanam dandastatra ditomaya. Mataji. Mahadeva uvacha nagam prajaisa balanam vanaya nanuchintaye devamaya bibhutanam dandastatra ditomaya. Mahadeva uvacha nagam prajaisa balanam vanaya nanuchintaye Deva Maya Vibhutanam Dandastatra Dito Maya. Do the word for word. Madeva, Lord Shiva, Uvacha said, Na, not, Agaham, offense, Raja Isha, O Lord of created beings, Balanam, of the children, Varnaya, I regard, Na, not, Anuchintaye, I consider, Devamaya, the external energy of the Lord, Abhibhutanam, of those deluded by, Danda, rod, Tatra, there, Rita, used, Maya, by me. The translation. Lord Shiva said, My dear Father Brahma, I do not mind the offenses created by the demigods, because the demigods are childish and less intelligent. I do not take a serious view of their offenses, and I have punished them only in order to right them. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. There are two types of punishment. One is that which a conqueror imposes on an enemy, and the other is like that a father imposes on his son. There is a gulf of difference between these two kinds of punishment. Lord Shiva is by nature a Vaishnava, a great devotee, and his name in this connection is Ashutosh. He is always satisfied, and therefore he did not become angry as if he were an enemy. He is not inimical to any living entity. Rather, he always wishes the welfare of all. Whenever he chastises a person, it is just like a father's punishment of his son. Lord Shiva is like a father because he never takes seriously any offense by any living entities, especially the demigods. The translation again. Lord Shiva said, My dear Father Brahma, I do not mind the offenses created by the demigod, because these demigods are childish and less intelligent. I do not take a serious view of their offenses, and I have punished them only in order to right them. So, it's a short purport, and a very interesting purport also, talking about correction and punishment. And whilst I was looking last night at this verse that I had to prepare for, there's a verse in the 4th canto in the 20th chapter, which is about spoken by Prithu Maharaj, where he's saying, My Lord, due to your illusory energy, all living beings in this material world have forgotten their real constitutional position, and out of ignorance they are always desirous of material happiness in the form of society, friendship, and love. Therefore, please do not ask me to take some material benefits from you, but as a father not waiting for the son's demand, does everything for the benefit of the son, please bestow upon me whatever you think best for me. So this verse, the father knows what is best for the child, and the child himself may not know. And sometimes the father will hug the child and kiss the child, and sometimes he will spank the child, or sometimes he will give him sweets, and sometimes bitter medicine. But whatever he does is for the child. It's in the best interest of the child. So thus here, Prithu Maharaj, he prays to the Supreme Lord that just as the father does whatever is best for the child, you kindly do whatever is best for me, because you are the Supreme Father. So this verse is talking about anger, and in correction, there's a great possibility. There's always a great possibility of someone being offended and someone becoming angry. And here we see this verse is talking about how to see when someone gets angry. And I was reading last night, I was looking at the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, when Brahma spoke to his sons after generating them. He said them to generate progeny. But they were attached to Krishna, they were attached to Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And their goal was to be liberated. So they expressed their unwillingness to do that, to increase the population. They didn't want to become family men, and they didn't want to be entangled in the false relationship of family bondage. So they refused to obey the order of the father. So you can see, although the father in one sense is the spiritual master, but they are not following the order of the spiritual masters, because they have a higher purpose, or they were desiring something higher, where they wanted to serve the Lord unconditionally. So they did not follow the order. And as it said in that verse in the 12th chapter, that Brahma was angry, and because he was angry, he tried to control and not express his anger. As we know that Brahma is in charge of the mode of passion, of material nature. So he tried to curb his anger, but out from his eyebrows came a child mixed with blue and red hue. And in the purport, which I will just read for a little bit, the face of anger is the same whether exhibited due to ignorance or knowledge. Although Brahma tried to curb his anger, he could not do so, even though he is the supreme being within this universe. Such anger in its true color came from between his eyebrows of Brahma as Rudra, in a mixed color of blue ignorance and red passion, because anger is a product of passion and ignorance. And then subsequently, when the child took birth, the child was crying and wanted to know where to reside. So then Brahma told him where he should reside. And, my dear boy, I've selected your places for your residence. And these are the places: the heart, the senses, the air of life, the sky, air, the fire, water, earth, sun, moon, and austerity. Uh, so then, anger, in the Bhagavad Gita, we also read about anger. In the third chapter, text 37, Kama Esa, Krodha Esa. So when lust and hankering are unsatisfied, then the element of Krodha, anger, appears. And which, Lord Krishna condemns as the most formidable enemy of the conditioned soul. So this anger, this anger develops in the heart and is manifested through the various senses like the eyes, hands, and leg. And when a man is angry, he expresses his anger with the red hot eyes. And sometimes, we clench our fist or kick our legs, or the different ways we express our anger. And sometimes we breathe very rapidly when we're angry also. That also happens. So these are the different places where Lord Shiva was asked to reside. And we see that when the sky is overcast like today and dense, the clouds and roars in anger, the wind blows fiercely sometimes. Sometimes the sea water is infuriated by the wind, or the fire is ablaze, like that. Different places where by the influence of the Rudra element, the sun becomes extremely hot and the moon becomes extremely cold. So even the sun becomes hot, as Prabhupada writes in his purport, you can get a heat stroke. And when the moon becomes cold, one can collapse. So like this, there's many other things we could speak on, but the point I'm making that about anger is in all of us, and the way to get rid of anger is, or become free from anger, is through forgiveness. It's interesting because we can engage in the process of Krishna consciousness and still not be forgiving also. So to become free from anger, as it's in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, I think Prabhupada mentions it, that to become free from anger, one has to be forgiving. So I was, there's another verse that I found interesting, was from the seventh canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Lord Shiva, the end of the millennium is the time of your anger. Now that this insignificant demon Hiranyakashipu has been killed, O my Lord, who are naturally affectionate to your devotee, kindly protect his son Prahlad Maharaj, who is standing nearby you as your fully surrendered devotee. So the purport, Prabhupada is saying, during the period of annihilation, at the end of each millennium, the Lord becomes angry. And that part of anger is played by Lord Shiva, who is therefore called Rudra, which we were describing how Rudra took birth earlier on. When the Lord appeared in great anger to kill Hiranyakashipu, everyone was extremely afraid of the Lord's attitude. But Lord Shiva, knowing very well that the Lord's anger is also his Leela, was not afraid. Lord Shiva knew that he would have to play the part of anger for the Lord. Kala means Lord Shiva and Bhairava. And Kopa refers to the Lord's anger. These words combined together as Kopakala refer to the end of each millennium. Actually, the Lord is always affectionate towards His devotees, even though He may appear very angry. Just like a father may appear very angry to the as we described earlier on, to the child, but he's still very affectionate. And here you can see Lord Shiva is speaking this verse. Therefore, Lord Shiva is, as Prabhupada writes in the purport, Sisi Raghunath ki. Therefore, Lord Shiva reminded the Lord to act like an affectionate father toward Prahlad Maharaj, who was standing by the Lord's side as an exalted, fully surrendered devotee. We also see how Prabhupada, he also sometimes exhibited his anger, and the relationship between disciple and spiritual master is paternal, a paternal relationship, and therefore we find sometimes Prabhupada got very angry, especially when the devotees did not execute their services properly. And the one that I was reading last night was when Navayogendra Swami he saw Prabhupada was very angry because another devotee was meant to be like the security, the guard at the door. And Prabhupada was ringing his bell and the devotee was not there. So he sent Navayogendra Swami to look for the devotee. And when the devotee came, then Prabhupada used heavy language, and I'll just read it. Where were you? Prabhupada shouted. And the devotee began shaking. Why did you not stay outside, rascal? You are not faithful. Why are you not performing your duty properly? Now Navayogendra also started to shake, although he was not the object of chastisement. So like this, Prabhupada went on for several minutes, reprimanding the absent-minded God and accusing him of serious inattentiveness in his service. But as soon as the devotee left, Prabhupada resumed his conversation in a completely normal way. There was no trace of anger on his face. So Navayogendra Maharaj was struck with wonder. And then he concluded, yes, this anger was just only for the rectification of the rectification of the devotee, and it did not arise from his uncontrolled senses. So Navayogendra Maharaj asked, how should we feel if you are angry with one of us? Because sometimes he also experienced that at least in one occasion, he experienced that when he was a little late, he took Prabhupada's prasadam a little late. And Prabhupada would be so upset and angry. And then he was asking Prabhupada, what should we do, or how should we take it? And Prabhupada said, you should take it that someone cares for you. Someone cares for you. And Prabhupada was saying, there's so many hundreds and thousands of people in the street, but no one is looking for them. But the spiritual master becomes angry with a particular disciple, that is his loving mercy on that person. So like Giriraj Maharaj gives the example of the dog with master and without master. The one with master is very healthy, has a leash and goes to the dog parlor and so many things, but there's these others, especially in India, you see dogs very lean or thin and they're walking on the beach sometimes and they have no master. So when the spiritual master do get angry, it's for the benefit of the disciple. So as the purport was speaking, that how Lord Shiva, although he was angry, but he was not upset with the devatas or the demigods. So this is something, we all have to practice ourselves or become more forgiving, as I would say, because anger is, people going to get angry, people on different levels of nature, and people going to get angry from time to time. But even in forgiveness, it must be done with, it's just that you don't brush it aside. You have to really sometimes delve into what the situation is, how it arose, and clear it up. Like one devotee was explaining how he was in the mood of forgiving. So he was forgiving different people for the offenses they may have caused to him, but he couldn't forgive one person. Just couldn't forgive this one person, and he just couldn't do it. And so he went to another devotee, and he asked the other devotee, well, I know I'm in the mood of forgiving, and I can't just forgive this one person. He said, well, you can't forgive the one person because he's still offending you. So somehow the offender wanted to visit the devotee, and the devotee said, oh no, I really don't want to meet him, But then anyway, he agreed. And then when the devotee came, they got into the discussion what the real problem is. Because sometimes people just make statements and it may not be true. So they got into the real problem and they discussed it maturely, and then everything was resolved. So I think that's how we can really become free from anger, when we deal with the problem in a very, very mature way. The other incident that I was looking also at was the one where with Siddha Swarup. I found that interesting. Because there was a great deal of agitation at the center. That was actually in Honolulu, because of the difference between the local authorities and Siddha Swarup Ananda Goswami. So, he did not follow ISKCON's authority, and somehow that was brought to the attention of Prabhupada, and the way Prabhupada dealt with him, and, it's quite in a heavy way, but at the same time in a loving way. So Siddha Swarup, was met with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was very direct. This is interesting that Prabhupada just got stuck into it. He just said, so the devotees have complaints against you. so Prabhupada, and Prabhupada, what is that, Srila Prabhupada? And what are the complaints, basically, was asking. And said, you do not shave your head. And then he gave different reasons, and he gave at least a reason it was cold. And then it got into the discussion. Then Prabhupada said to him, you can put a hat on. And then he would not carry his danda, his sannyas danda. And then then he would give the argument, he would give the argument that, well, in the plains he would have problems. And then Prabhupada was saying that so many other sannyasis would carry their danda in the plain. So different reasons. But Prabhupada was correcting him. And this was an interesting point, was that the followers, one of the complaints was the followers did not come to see Srila Prabhupada, but they only come to see him. And they only hear from him and deal with him. So that was also brought up. But Prabhupada said that the business of the disciple is to bring devotees to the feet of the spiritual master, to the spiritual master. And that was the business. That is the business of a disciple. So then there was Shrutikirti interjected, and he said, well, he noticed that Siddha Swarup was there, and somebody brought a garland and they put it on him, but your picture was there, Prabhupada's picture was there, and it should be put on him first, and offered to him, and then offered to Siddha Swarup. That would have been okay. So Prabhupada said, yeah, that's correct. That is correct. That's what should have been done. So we cannot minimize the spiritual master, especially the founder Acharya and other spiritual masters and other devotees. But anyway, he kind of accepted, and the way Shrutikirti Prabhu wrote it, he said, Srila Prabhupada finished the discussion and did not belabor any point. He straightforwardly addressed the issue of following the instruction of the spiritual master and the relationship between guru and disciple. The final point wrapped up the meeting. We all offered obeisances and left the room of our divine guide and loving Gurudev. The next day, Siddha Swarup Maharaj again visited Srila Prabhupada. Siddha Swarup gave Srila Prabhupada a $10,000 donation that one of his followers had given to him. This demonstrated his understanding of Srila Prabhupada's instruction. So although Prabhupada corrected him and in a very, had to be straight frank with him, but still in a loving way. And in our purport, we see that was the points that Prabhupada made in the purport. Yeah. He is always satisfied, and therefore he did not become angry as if he were an enemy. He is not inimical to any living entity. Rather, he always wishes the welfare of all. Whenever he chastises a person, it's just like a father's punishment of his son. So, these are some of the points I thought was relevant for. It's a very short purport, about 7 or 8 lines. So I thought these are the points were relevant to the purport. Now I'm ready for some correction or guidance, Maharaj. Thank you.
Anger, I mean, you could have a seminar just on anger, actually. It's classically, as Lord Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita in the 2nd chapter, it comes as a result of lust. And I remember Harisori Prabhu saying about Srila Prabhupada, when Srila Prabhupada, if someone really did something wrong and Prabhupada became angry, he would really chastise them. But if Prabhupada was even more angry, he might not say anything. And yes, is it in Nectar of Devotion? Anyway, it's somewhere. Srila Prabhupada talks about anger, dovetailing it in Krishna's service. Arjuna became angry and fought in the battle, because you can't really fight unless you're angry. And Prabhupada talks about Hanuman, who became angry and set Lanka on fire. So that's there. But, anger in general, or at least on the material level, angers are really tamasic and rajasic phenomenon. It's not generally got any connection with goodness. It's just passion and ignorance. So therefore we, who, are so much from backgrounds of passion and ignorance, and really, generally, at least not so much goodness, we should be, even though Prabhupada says, you can use anger like Arjuna and Hanuman did and others, but we should be very careful, because it can, if one overdoes anger, gets carried away. I mean, one commits offense, that's one thing. And it's destructive. In the Bhagavatam, there's a verse which says basically that one should be, that anger can be more dangerous than lust, because anger makes one a source of dread for others. And I read years and years ago, but I've gone back to that, regularly, because it really does. It frightens others and it offends others. And Prabhupada would use anger, definitely from time to time. It wasn't just like, on very rare occasions, but he did use anger. But, well, as you were saying nicely, that it was a sort of, you could say constructive anger, but he was trying to help someone overcome something that they need to overcome. That if they don't overcome, it's going to be detrimental for their Krishna consciousness. Yeah, so like one time, Prabhupada was somewhere in America, in one of the more major temples. It may have been Los Angeles, but I don't know exactly. And it was a Ekadasi, and they served Prabhupada Charanamrita. And Prabhupada looked at it in his hand and saw some grain there. And Prabhupada called for, who has made this Charanamrita? And it was one young lady devotee. And Prabhupada really chastised her. Something like, Do you want to kill your spiritual master? You know, it's really like, it's pretty extreme. And the girl was quite devastated and, you know, crying intensely. But it's so important to observe Ekadasi properly, and we have to learn that. It's not just like, you know, if you break Ekadasi, well, you know, it was an accident, don't worry too much. But it's really serious to break Ekadasi. So Prabhupada expressed great anger, but to help the girl, even though she became really sort of deeply shaken. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anybody else would like to? Yes, Himlata.
Hare Krishna. You mentioned that dealing with anger, solution is forgiveness. But if there's not directly offenses involved, but the anger is more due to, let's say, long-lasting, I guess, improperly conducted relationships, let's say in family situation, I guess intentions generally are good, but there is a lot of abuse in the families, either from parents' side towards the children, sometimes the other way around, spousal abuse, so on. And eventually, obviously, some minor instances, they will be overlooked, but they will sort of gather momentum, and eventually that sort of ball of anger or rage that comes out from it, it's very difficult to deal with. And in the families, generally, there is so much karma involved. It's much harder to deal with the family in objective manner than, let's say, somebody outside. You could sit down and talk it out. But how to deal with that particular anger, if it's really detrimental eventually to your spiritual life or just general mental well-being? How to deal with that type of anger?
Would you like to answer that? Your thoughts on it?
I'm waiting to hear the answer.
Well, you know, I mean, there's different ways to deal with it, you know, just like with the anger in family situations. Like, I have many, many devotees came with such situations. And the way I dealt with it was like, there's, firstly you have to hear the person out, the reasons for their anger, and in some cases we have to refer them to like I had a few cases that I referred to some psychologists or psychiatrists to tend to some matters, or some psychologists I referred one person specifically. Because some things, we can't deal with. Even as a devotee, sometimes we just can't tolerate. So we have to leave it to some experts to look at it. That's what I normally do because it's very difficult, even for yourself, because you're only seeing yourself, that people are only getting angry with you, but you're also getting angry. It's two sides to it. And we only see, well, that person is only angry with us. And then the other, I mentioned forgiveness because I read that in the Bhagavatam, in the first canto. I think 1927 purport it is in. The ninth, yeah. So as a devotee, if you don't learn to forgive, it'll affect you. As long as you hold on to that, then you won't be able to chant properly, you won't be able to do your service, so many things. But there are also like some very abusive relationships, and then one may have to separate also. And just like the one example of where Prabhupada was talking about where there shouldn't be divorce, there shouldn't be any divorce, and then later he kind of approved the divorce, and the devotees were asking, but how, you just spoke about divorce is not good. And Prabhupada said, the person going to do it anyway. So if I sanction it, then the reaction is lessened. So it's not that we can continue. Sometimes in some situations, if there's so much of anger and it's affecting your spiritual life, then you have to consider it more deeply. Check with senior devotees, check with the spiritual master, and you may have to move away from that situation. And that's how I look at it at times. We have a lot of them. I have quite a few cases that I've dealt with recently like that. You just have to tell. Like there was one person who's not a devotee, comes here, was single person living with a brother, but he was so abusive, very abusive. And so I called the brother and spoken to him, and then somehow he started coming here, getting attracted to Krishna consciousness a little. Made him help Lakshminath Prabhu Day in the garden, and he was helping. But it's just that he's just an angry person. He's a frustrated person. So she was trying to help him, and she couldn't leave him alone because she was so attached to him. But then I told her, you have to break that attachment, and you have to decide now what you want to do. So I told her. Then she decided, that she leave her home. She actually left the home, and she's now living in the Lakshmi Narayan temple. So she comes here, quite frequently. So that's how I dealt with situations like that. I don't know if this answer is okay or Maharaj. Yeah.
Because of the acoustics, I couldn't follow exactly. There was something about anger within the family.
Yeah.
Something to do with that, but
yeah.
the details I couldn't catch.
Of course.
Due to abuse.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, amongst devotees, well, I think Raghunath Bhatta Prabhu answered well. There's this thing that, an idea that whatever situation you're in, Krishna put you in that situation, so you got to try and work with it, even though it may be a very difficult situation. But sometimes Krishna puts you in a very difficult situation, not just because he wants you to sort of, persevere and just carry on regardless, but because Krishna wants you to do something else. Yeah. And, these are subtle types of situations. Considerations. But definitely it's sometimes like that. Yeah. On one level you may think that it's my duty in Krishna consciousness to just sort of grin and bear it, or grit my teeth and something along those lines. And in many situations that's true, but in some situations it's not true. Actually, Krishna wants you to get out and do something else, or go somewhere else, or something along those lines. And one has to, as you were saying, take advice. Sometimes if people are chronically abusive, And as you're saying, sometimes it's like a psychological condition which you can't address. An expert could try. They might or they might not be successful also. But I mean, to develop tolerance is a very good thing. It's extremely important. But at a certain point, you may have to just, remove yourself and take another approach altogether. And one would take advice or pray to Krishna. Please give me.
Even like as Maharaj was saying, even Prabhupada in his preaching, when things didn't work out, like in Jhansi it didn't work, he left to go somewhere else. That's the way it is, So, thank you, Maharaj, for your... anybody else would like to say anything? Srila Prabhupada ki. Hare Krishna.